the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Gerard Pratt, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Captain Lisa Batchelor. This week, we are commemorating the 75th anniversary of D-Day and the Normandy landings. This evening, we will tell the story of Surgeon Lieutenant Derek Napier McKenzie, who played an important role in Australia's involvement in these events. Today also marks the 50th anniversary of the collision at sea between HMAS Melbourne and USS Frank E. Evans. As part of Australia's commitment to the Southeast Asia Treaty Organisation, naval exercises were conducted in the South China Sea in early June 1969. HMAS Melbourne and her escorts, including USS Frank E. Evans, were involved in an anti-submarine training exercise known as Sea Sprite. At around 3 o'clock on the morning of the 3rd of June 1969, the commanding officer of Melbourne, Captain John Stevenson, ordered Evans to take up station as plane guard in preparation for the launch of a Grumman S-2 tracker. By this stage, Melbourne's navigational lights had been turned up to illuminate the ship. Against orders that all manoeuvres carried out by carrier escort vessels would begin by turning away from the aircraft carrier, Evans began to turn to starboard. A radio message was sent warning the vessel that they were on a collision course. Evans acknowledged the message, but when no change in course was detected, Stevenson ordered Melbourne to turn hard to port. As Evans turned to starboard around the same time, Melbourne narrowly missed her, but their courses brought the destroyer back in front of the carrier, and Melbourne hit Evans amidships, slicing the destroyer in two. The forward half of the destroyer sank quickly, leaving the aft section still floating. Melbourne halted immediately and lashed the rear half of Evans to her own hull, and the Australians deployed helicopters, boats, life rafts and life rings to help rescue survivors. Australian sailors jumped into the water to rescue their fellow American sailors. Of the 273 crew aboard USS Frank E. Evans, 74 were killed. Most of them were in the forward half of the ship. HMAS Melbourne arrived in Singapore on the 6th of June, and its bow was temporarily repaired before the carrier made her way to the Cockatoo Island dockyard in Sydney Harbour for more extensive repairs. 817 Squadron, RAN, received the United States Navy Meritorious Unit Commendation for its rescue efforts, and 5 individuals were decorated for their roles in assisting Evans's crew. Tonight, we warmly welcome members of the crew from HMAS Melbourne who are in attendance, and the veterans of both Melbourne and Evans who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. We also warmly welcome Mr. Alex McGowan, representing the Naval Association of Australia, ACT section. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors and students on behalf of the following schools. From New South Wales, Berkeley Vale Public School and Hornsby Heights Public School. I invite you all now to please join in singing the National Anthem.
Our home is earth.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through until the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would become a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Surgeon Lieutenant Derek Napier McKenzie, Royal Australian Naval Reserve, who was killed in action when HMS Quorn was sunk in the English Channel in support of the Normandy landings in France on the 3rd of August 1944. Born in Ayr in Queensland on the 15th of July 1915, Derek McKenzie was the only son of John and Mary McKenzie. After the passing of his father when he was 10 years old, Derek moved with his mother to Melbourne, where they lived in the suburb of Glen Iris. Derek grew up to study medicine at the University of Melbourne. While enrolled at the university, he enlisted in the militia, serving in the local Melbourne Volunteer Rifles Regiment. During the Second World War, Mackenzie enlisted in the Royal Australian Naval Reserve with the rank of Surgeon Lieutenant and was posted to London, where he served on attachment to the Royal Navy. His first postings in Britain were to Royal Navy shore establishments, HMS Pembroke, HMS Ferret, HMS Fortitude, and HMS Spartiate. In England, he met a Scottish woman, Florence, with whom he fell in love. Although they were not to marry, Mackenzie's service record records Florence as his de facto wife, and she changed her surname to Mackenzie by deed poll. In August 1943, Mackenzie was appointed ship's surgeon to the Hunt-class destroyer, HMS Quorn. At the time that Mackenzie joined the crew, Quorn was part of the North Sea Flotilla. For the rest of 1943 and early 1944, Quorn undertook patrol and convoy duties in the North Sea. At the end of May 1944, Quorn was detached from the North Sea Flotilla for duty with an escort group in the Eastern Task Force for Operation Overlord, the Allied invasion of Normandy. On D-Day, the 6th of June 1944, HMS Quorn was one of the 6,000 vessels in the largest armada ever assembled. The success of the Allied landings in Normandy required the Allied navies to cross the English Channel to break in and establish a foothold in Hitler's Atlantic Wall. HMS Quorn spent D-Day escorting vessels across the English Channel, protecting the fleet from German submarines and torpedo boats that the Allied commanders feared would attack the vital supply line linking Britain with the landing beaches in Normandy. This job was equally vital in the days and weeks after the initial landing on the 6th of June, and during this period, Quorn continued in its role of escorting convoys and protecting the landing beaches. On several occasions, the Germans attacked the flanks of Allied naval forces with torpedo boats, called E-boats by the British. The German Navy also adopted the tactic of deploying divers on Niger torpedoes, a kind of one-man midget submarine, often called a human torpedo. On the night of the 3rd of August 1944, HMS Quorn was off the coast near the French port of Le Havre, protecting the landing beaches from the German raiders, when it came under attack by a force of E-boats and human torpedoes. Struck by a torpedo, Quorn broke in two and sank rapidly. Derek McKenzie was one of 4 officers and 126 ratings killed during the attack. He was 29 years old. Derek McKenzie's name is commemorated on the Plymouth Naval Memorial, which overlooks Plymouth Sound on Britain's Devon coast. A photograph of Mackenzie's name on this memorial is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. The Plymouth Naval Memorial lists the more than 23,000 British and Commonwealth sailors who were lost or buried at sea in both the First and Second World Wars. His name is listed here on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. This is one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Surgeon Lieutenant Derek Napier McKenzie, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If able, please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They have no grave but the cruel sea. No flowers lay at their head. A rusting hulk is their tombstone, a fast on the ocean bed. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières, or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.